as I was telling you before we recorded, what I love most about it is I always look for books or even interviews that I do where like how can I become more self-reflective? How can I develop more self-awareness? And nobody really gives me a great answer for that doing about 100 interviews. And I think that's where I personally get the most value from the work that you guys have done, even from like the interviews that you guys have had on the Learning Leader Show and the book that you guys have written together, is that you guys actually have prompts, and I can write a letter to my 10-year-old self. I can, write down who's in my foxhole, which I didn't even know what that was until I read this book. So I love that, and so congrats to both of you guys on publishing this book.
Thank you. I'm glad it's
Thank you.
actionable. I think that's the thing you hope, is that there's practical application that can maybe make a difference in your life, that you actually do something with it, not just be, slightly entertained, but also you take some action from it.
Awesome. So just from like an origin story, how did you guys sort of intersect to put this work out together?
The book. Okay, I'll take that. So we sat down together a few years ago to record an online course. And I didn't do probably a great job of planning, outside of the fact that there were video guys there, and there was a friend of mine named Dan Smith who sat close to us off camera, who transcribed everything we said over the course of those, I guess, 7 or 8 hours for the day. And after I read the transcription from Dan, I texted Brooke and thought, like, this actually could be or should be a book. What do you think? And I think he just said, "All right, I'm down," and that was it. And so 2.5 years later, we actually have the artifact. It's here. So a lot of messiness in between that time and this time, but we made it, I guess.
That's awesome. One of the things you guys open with the book, so a couple of things that I really love are quotes. So I might read one of the quotes. I'd love for you guys to reflect on it. But in the beginning, one of the things that you guys talk about is sort of like your purpose and your why. And Brooke, one of the things that really stuck out to me, I won't read the whole thing, but you go on to say, true fulfillment will always be just out of grasp to those longing for success, while those pursuing excellence can enjoy it daily. Right. I think about like the journey and maybe the trophy at the end. And you've obviously been coaching at like the highest level. And when I think about what you do, you know, I also think about like what Chris Heron does, who I know you guys both know, speaks to kids. And to me, that is like, you will get like caught quick if you're not, if you're not real and authentic with them. To me, that's the hardest audience to build trust with and rapport with. I don't know if you agree, Brooke, based on your experience, but I'd love to hear about your why behind the book, just to kick things off.
Yeah, first of all, I definitely agree with you. They sniff fake out real fast, and they don't hesitate to call you on it and tell you about it. For me, my purpose personally is excellence over success. So I define excellence as, you maximizing your potential, where success is more a comparison with other people. And so what I think my goal is to always help people try to focus on becoming the best version of themselves rather than just better than somebody else or something else. I think, in the score that matters, we talk a lot about defining success on your terms. And that to me is what excellence is all about. And that's why you can enjoy it daily. And, there's a part in the book that we talk about the idea of the greatest that's a mirage. There's not a greatest. Like there can be a bunch of people that are great. Like we can all be great, and focusing on just trying to become the best version of ourselves allows us to control our daily actions and our behaviors, and then have fulfillment from that, rather than all but one person being fulfilled because they're in first place or they win the game or whatever it is. But I think the idea behind it is just having the discipline and the understanding to define success on your terms rather than allowing other people to do it for you.
I love that. Ryan, what do you think about the thesis of the book, right? About the internal scoreboard rather than the external one. What really motivated you about this topic?
It's aspirational for me, first and foremost. something I struggle with. And if you really want to learn about something, try to write a book about that topic. You'll learn, because writing is the ultimate tool for clarity. So that's first and foremost why I was wanted to continue a relationship with Brook after we first met in, I guess, 2017, 2016, in that time frame. Was I admired his ability to know himself, to know what tough, passionate, unified, and thankful is all about. Those are his core values, which everybody knows if you know him. And I wanted that, and I feel like through the course of this, I've gotten much further along on my kind of process than I was at the beginning of it. So that's a huge win, because I think one of the prompts I ask myself at the end of each day is what did I do today to be a little bit wiser going to bed than I was when I woke up, from Charlie Munger. And so having deep, long form conversations with people on my podcast, to having regular dialogue with members of my foxhole and my friends and people like the team that Brook and I have put together to go out and do work with some of these great companies we talk to, that ensures that I'm getting better each day. So really that's what it's about. That's why the subtitle is like growing excellence. It's that growth part is really important for me, because I can't like lead anybody else unless I'm going to be really good and intentional about leading myself first. And so all of that's just really about being more thoughtful and intentional. And so I would say this project was more for me than anything else, selfishly, just to learn and to get a little bit better. And I think now that we've at least completed the first part, which is the writing, the next part, which will happen for the rest of our lives, is the selling. I feel pretty good about that.
That's amazing. I mean, I could totally see this as I mean, it has to have like a workshop that people can take virtually. I think that would be huge. One of the things that struck me was a quote, and I don't know how much time you guys spent with Donald Miller, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it reminds me of maybe the process of this book. I'd love to hear either of your reflections on it. And it's quote, writing a book is like climbing a mountain in the fog. You don't know where the top is, but if you walk uphill every morning for 2 hours, you're going to get there. And I think that's such a good metaphor for many things in life. I'm wondering, what did that mean to you guys?
Well, he was with us in Nashville when we had one of our learning leader growth summits for members of my leadership circle, and Brook plays a prominent role in all of those. Don came and told us that, and I've just always, it really resonates with me, because I think it's true, but I think it goes well beyond just writing a book. That's kind of like life. It's really hard I know there's something Brook and I, we've gone back and forth with, like, what are we going to do in the future? And to me, it's just really foggy. But I think we both share the attribute and the skill to get up and work every day, no matter what, whether we feel bad, whether we feel good, whether we win, whether we lose, we know what we're going to do the next day. We're going to get up and work. And I think if you keep doing that, it's funny how things seem to work out. Good opportunities come your way. You make the most of those opportunities and you get up and work. And I think James Clear told us last year in Columbus at another one of our growth summits that it's actually more important what you choose to do when you don't feel like it, when you don't feel good, when you wake up and it's not going your way. It's more important what you do on those days. So I think that just kind of goes back to both of probably our dads, as well as just who we try to be. And that's like, hey, I may not be the most talented or the most skilled. I'm not that great by myself, but I can get up and go to work each day. And so I'm going to choose to do that. And that's again, back to Eric Adams, who said, I'm not going to beat you with brilliance, but I can win with endurance. And I think that's, I really feel that. And I think we probably share that ethos about us.
I love that. How much, like, I'm just out of curiosity, Brook, how much of like his podcast did you listen to before you guys started working together? And like, did you guys know of each other's work? Obviously you coach at Centerville, which I believe you got in your work in recent years, you guys won a state championship. And I know you do a lot of coaching outside of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was a fan of the podcast. Actually, when I first reached out to Ryan to come talk to we had a group of captains of all of our different sports teams when we first started this thing. And I reached out to Ryan and asked him to come speak to it. Not like I didn't think there was any chance he would come talk to us. I knew how busy he was. I I mean, he had Jim Collins and Pat Lencioni on his podcast. I was like, why is this dude going to reply to my email about coming to speak to a bunch of high school kids? But I knew he had graduated from Centerville, so might as well shoot your shot, right? So I did, and he replied, came and spoke to our group, and then from there we've just kind of grown our relationship, and now Ryan's somebody that I go to a lot and talk to a lot about things that I'm wondering about, and we bounce ideas off each other. So it started just as not really knowing each other at all to becoming very good friends that happened to write a book together.
We talk about the sniff test, right? And Ryan's talking to like business executives, right, all over the country. How do you think he passed that sniff test with the kids? What was it that maybe connected with them in that moment, if you can recall?
Well, I mean, first thing is he's from Centerville, so he's an alumni. He's been where they are, and so that definitely helps. And then he was real. He's spoken to a lot of different people, but the number one thing people recognize, no matter what age they are, is authenticity. And Ryan was real when he spoke to him. He talked to him about personal things. He talked to him about goals that he had, failures that he had experienced. So those things are all binding, and doesn't matter the age.
I love that. I want to jump into some of those core values. I feel like Ryan's looking at my notes somehow. I want to make sure I'm not sharing my screen here, but he named them. He memorized them, right? Tough, passionate, unified, thankful.
Omaid, more people know Brook's values than know their own values. That's a fact. So I'm just saying, it's a cool thing that a whole community and beyond know your core values. That means they're really resonating with people. So I know them just because I'm one of the many others out there that have memorized the Brook Cups / Centerville basketball core values.
I love it. I took Coach K's masterclass not long ago, and he talks about building. It was awesome too. It was amazing. Okay. It was so good. I paid for like the next year, even because like my thing was coming up, and I was like, "This is so good. I need to finish this." But he talks about building core values for your team, and I had never seen anyone talk about it that way. And that's his magic too. Is like, it just felt like he was talking, and there happened to be a camera. He was so authentic about it, and he's like, "This is actually how you build core values for your basketball team, etc." And I personally never built personal core values, which is why I love this part so much. But Brook, I want you to talk about, I'm going to ask you about this story, but I don't want you to tell, if someone's listening to this, I don't want you to tell them what the value is. So what I'd love for you to do, if you're open to this here, tell me about your dad, what he went through growing up. And I'm curious how what he did for you impacted some of the decisions you made in your life. And then we'll tie it together with the value that sort of you etched, in stone, so to speak.
Yeah. So my dad went to like 15 different high schools. He grew up dirt poor, didn't have anything, first person in his family to go to college. And he chose, his dad was an alcoholic, an abusive alcoholic. He would come home from school. He's got two brothers. But they would come home from school, and mom would be beat up, dad would be drunk and passed out. It was a regular occurrence. And so when dad finished high school, he just knew he either knew he was going down that path, or he had to intentionally choose a different path. And so I give him all the credit for changing the course of my family's life. Like, if he doesn't decide I've got to do something different, we're in the exact same situation he was, and like my kids would be too. And so that one decision, just it makes you really aware of like how impactful every little decision you make is, because at the time, I'm sure he just knew, like, I got to get out of here. This is crazy. But he didn't think about the impact of his grandson, like what he gets to do because he made that decision. So dad went to the Air Force, came back out of the Air Force, taught for 30 years, retired, was a math, science, physics teacher. My mom drove a school bus, so we were all about school. Dad coached when he could. When he was never really a sports guy. He never had enough money to play sports in high school. Said he quit one high school team because the coach accused him of stealing something in the locker room. And he said he couldn't, if the coach didn't trust his word, then he didn't have anything. So he just quit playing, never played another sport. But my dad just, he does not flinch. I mean, he got electrocuted taking down an antenna off of a house, and like he got hit in the parking lot of our high school one morning walking when it was foggy, and like got up and went to school, like brushed his arm off, brushed, like he just never made excuses, always went to work, did what he was supposed to do, and just there was never an excuse. There was never, oh, I don't feel good. There was, I mean, never. And so, that obviously led to, he's somebody that I admire deeply because of, not because of anything that he did. It was just how he did everything is more what it is.
I love that. Tell me about the value that now you tie in with that story that you just shared with us. I appreciate you leaning into that, but I'd love to understand how that sort of framed into the core value. We won't go through all the core values, but I think this is a really important one.
Yeah. So when I was finding my core values, I looked at who I admire, and my dad is at the top of the list of people that I admire. So then the question becomes, well, okay, why do I admire him? And not just because he's my dad. I mean, like, what's he do that makes me, aspire to do that? And, the first thing, like, there's a toughness to my dad. I always remember I'm out working on a car, changing a tire, and he'd cut his finger, and like he'd be bleeding, and he'd be bleeding, and he'd just keep working. It's like he didn't even know he was bleeding. And I remember being like, man, I wish I was bleeding a little bit. That's freaking sweet. Like, he's bleeding and he's not even saying anything. Right. And so at first, tough was pretty clear to me because of the no complaining about anything. But then I was like, okay, well, what does tough look like from that? And, for me, dad just always showed up. Like, he never missed school. He never missed work. He never missed practice. He was always at our games. Like, it was just, no matter what, he showed up. I didn't even think you got sick once you were an adult because he was never sick. Right. And so, so that became my behavior. Show up became my behavior, but then I changed it a little bit later into positive body language, because that's really what dad did. He showed up and his attitude was good. He wasn't just there, but he was like present, and it seemed like he was always happy to be there. I know he wasn't, especially now that I have kids. Like, I know he wasn't always happy to be there and happy to be doing the things that I wanted him to do, but that's how it felt.
I love it. Did he get to meet his grandkids?
He did. Yep. Yep. He goes to all their games right now. He's in the front row. And yeah. Doesn't say anything, but always there.
So he embodies tough, right? And let's tie one together, because I feel like you both have, you've got thankful in there, and I know, Ryan, you've got thankful in yours as well. I think of gratitude, and I think of this saying, and tell me about this. The quote is, "Drink the water, but remember who dug the well." Tell me about where that's hanging up, and I'd love to hear from both of you guys about gratitude.
Yeah, so that's a sign in our locker room. And I think of it as, I mean, just like my dad. I mean, his decision to go to the Air Force and allow me to do the things that I'm doing, not being grateful for that is I mean, that's about as entitled as you can get. And so I want to make sure I'm conveying that to the people that I'm leading and the people that are around me. And so, drink the water, but remember who dug the well just means, like, you're drinking water from a well that someone else has dug. You need to be grateful for that. Like, you need to appreciate the opportunities that you have as a result of someone else's work. There's a level to humility to it. And I think gratitude it just needs to be expressed. So we have some systems within the program, within our class, and in my personal standards, that I try to be very intentional about expressing gratitude, to make sure I'm living my core value of thankful.
Ryan, I read that you had like 20 and you 20 values, and then you like dwindled them down. Help me understand, because I think that's the hard part, right? Is having clarity and having 3 or 4. How did you get there? And then I'd love to hear about gratitude as well.
Well, I mean, I hung it up in my house. Yeah, the Hawk family values. There was like roughly 20 of them. which I guess is still better than not even thinking about it. You know, at least you're thinking about values, even if you haven't narrowed them down. It's simply just being okay with the fact that you're going to leave great values out of your final 3 or 4. That's all it is. I feel like you just got to be okay with it. Like, of course, like being honest and having integrity is really important. Just not one of my 4, right? But that doesn't mean it's not important or I don't value it. So after a lot of back and forth, texting, calls, Zooms, in person with Brook, I got down to thoughtful, thankful, curious, and consistent. And you asked about thankful. To me, it stems from the fact of being just extremely fortunate to how, like, the situation I was born into. 2 very loving parents who are the models for like how to have a great relationship. An older brother and a younger brother who have came along 2 years after me, who are, you know, very supportive, each other's biggest fans and have been for forever. I realized as I've grown up that that's actually like not necessarily normal. We never wanted for anything. I got to see my mom and dad's work ethic, and so I've just kind of modeled my work ethic and consistency and getting up and getting after it each day after them. So same with my brothers. So I think that's to me what I think about being thankful is like, well, you got to be thankful for the situation you're born into, and when you're given a lot, I believe you should give a lot. And so my critical behavior for thankful is leaving it better, or the shortest possible is leave it better. The longer version of that is leave people, places, and things better than you found them. And so that's an intentional thought each day. Did I leave Omaid better than I found him? Did I give you everything I had during our time together, whether it's a simple text message or it's a conversation? And, you know, I definitely mess that up sometimes, but it's a question I regularly ask is, did I leave this place better? Did I pick up the trash? Did I leave the, you know, just at Speedway, getting a big gulp, getting ready for this, wanting some energy, right? A Diet Mountain Dew. And did I give a good smile to the person who checked me out so that and say, hey, have a great day, Terry? I asked her name about 6 weeks ago because I go there quite frequently to get gas. It's right by my house. That Terry knows I care about her name and that she's retired, but now she picked up this job just to have something fun to do. And then I smile and say, thank you. And like, I'm thinking like, well, I hope I left her better than I found her. Like, it wasn't that hard. There isn't that much to do, but that's part of like being intentional about the core value of being thankful is leaving Terry better than I found her, even if it's a simple smile and a thank you, have a great day. So I just think that intentionality about whatever you value is really important. And so I don't necessarily care about like what people choose to value. I just think they should value something and then find a way to intentionally live that out each day. And if you do that, again, I like your odds. Like, I like your odds of good things happening, like, or at least of being fulfilled and feeling like you're doing what you're supposed to do. So I try to do that. Again, we mess it up, but I think it's just really, it's an aspirational thing. Cause like my values are what I'm about, but it's also what I'm like striving for. It's not necessarily that I do perfectly each day. And I think that's good. It's good to have something to strive for, to aspire to.
Well, we've got the master of core values on the line as well. Brook, when he was building these out, what was sort of your one piece of advice of not overthinking it?
I always think less is more. That's probably the guiding practice. By eliminating, you can focus. I think the kind of the essentialism, minimalist mindset around values is the way to go, because you can't be intentional about anything if everything's important to you. So, you know, like Ryan said, integrity, obviously, yeah, we value integrity. And it's not to say we don't value it or it's not important to us. We're just saying these are how we want to live our life. And by focusing on them, you know, I'm going to have to say no to some other things. So I would just say the less is more is a great guide to it.
I told you guys I have a lot of quotes, so got another one for you. It makes me think of what we're talking about now, and it's from, I think it's from Coach Zeller. He said, "Beyond your parents, Coach Zeller provided me with a living example that it's what you do outside of the expected that makes the difference. Everything in life is determined by the extra." Ryan was just talking about, you know, the work ethic, and I think about a lot of what you guys wrote about in the book was going above the minimum viable. I'm curious, Brooke, when you think about what Coach Zeller said to you, what does that mean to you now?
Yeah, Z was my guy. Like he was my high school coach, and then he actually came back out of retirement for 1 year so I could be his assistant because I was coming out of college. I didn't know what I was doing. He retired. I was like, Z, come back for a year so you can teach me how to coach. He did, and then I got the job at my alma mater. And the thing that, my purpose is actually very closely tied to Coach Zeller because I thought he was an incredible high school basketball coach and won 0 district championships. Never won a district championship. And I think I would take him over, like I would take him over Coach K. I would take him over any coach that's coached. Like
What was so
he was
special about him?
incredible. His ability to connect with people and his willingness to do extra things to make you feel special. So, I mean, he taped my ankles. So Coach Zeller was an All-American at Miami of Ohio and played behind Oscar Robertson in the NBA for a few years. And I just remember him taping my ankles before games, and he would write on my ankle tape. I saved the one from my last game. Like would write on my ankle tape, shoot the ball, Brook. Right. And I remember thinking like this guy was playing in the NBA and now he's taping some random average high school kid's ankles and not complaining about it, not acting like it's like he's better than that. And it's been a big reflection point for me of just like, if I think he is the best coach that I've had and he never won a district championship, what sense does it make to relate success by other people's standards to what excellence is? It doesn't make any sense. So, we just won our 6th district championship in a row, right? I'm not a better coach than Coach Zeller. I'm not. And so that to me, like that jacked me up when I was young because I was thinking everything was based on my record and how many wins I had. And so, Coach Zeller's willingness, like if you took a charge, you got a candy bar and a little circle basketball with the date and time and all that stuff on it. Like all these extra things that he would always do to make you feel better. Like we'd shoot for lottery tickets at the end of practice sometimes, or he'd bring somebody a piece of pie that, was having a bad week. And like that kind of stuff was, to me, it was always extra. And we were always the most prepared team. Like that was never even remotely close. And so that extra was obvious, but it was kind of those relational extras that kind of led to what you're talking about with my respect for Coach Zeller.
I love it. Ryan, what do you think of when you hear that story?
Oh, I love it. I honestly, man, I was just thinking that I'm one of the cool parts of writing a book together is like we get to do these podcasts now to promote it. I just get to sit here and learn, and I mean, I've heard Coach Z stories before, but there's like new stuff every time we talk. And that's an exciting day for me to think about like, oh, what's something new I'm going to learn, a cool story, an anecdote, or something that I could tie back to or try to implement into my own life or tell other people to help them. So, yeah, I mean, I think both of us have been impacted by, again, being very lucky to be impacted by amazing high school coaches. I played for Bob Gregg and Ron Ullery. I mean, Bob Gregg is a legend. I think Ron Ullery is too. And that's where I learned resilience, work ethic, caring for people. And most importantly, I would say, especially early in my career, believing in somebody more than they believe in themselves. Like I just I don't know if coaches even fully realize the power they have. I mean, I think the good ones probably do, but I didn't believe that I was good enough to do those things. And to have somebody else pour that belief into you and say, I'm going to make sure you're ready. Well, you're going to be here in January, February, and then in June, I'll see you at 4:30, right? In July, get ready to run, right? 2-a-days, like, let's go. So I'll make sure you build some confidence for when the lights are really bright on Friday night against those dudes who are twice your size, who are grown men when you're 14 years old as a freshman. I'll make sure of that. Trust me. And they did. And so you learn from those guys. If I had like the normal high school coach, like not the Brook Cups or the Bob Greggs of the world, but the normal ones, I don't go to college to play sports. I definitely don't get a scholarship. Like none of this stuff happens. And so that's like again, another getting back to being thankful, like how lucky is that? My parents chose to move to Centerville because there was this quarterback named Kirk Herbstreit who was playing when I was 4 years old at Centerville High School for the legendary Bob Gregg, and thought, man, that would be cool if our kids played there. Like, who knows? maybe they'd have a chance to do that type of thing, you know? And so it's wild that it actually worked out. But I think like all of that's luck. Like all of that's luck. All of that is another reason of the many reasons just to be really grateful. And now to try, for me, like to try to get the most out of like all this stuff you're given to give and impact other people. And that's the ultimate juice, man. Like Brook sent a note in our group text a couple of days ago from a letter written by a former either student or player, or maybe both. And we're like, that's the juice, man. Like that's the juice. Like that's what it's all about. Like the impact that you have on people. Like that's part of the fuel that helps us keep this thing going, especially when it's tough. And so, yeah, I don't know. I could talk about my coaches forever. So I'll stop, but I appreciate you asking. And I love hearing Coach Z's stories because it reminds me of Coach Gray and Coach Ullery's stories too.
Well, we can keep talking about Ryan for a second. Brook, when you hear about the value of consistent, I've got my stories about him that I feel like I can talk about for days, but like, to me, that is the one that just highly stands out because of what I've seen. You know, you've got receipts for this. Brook, when you think of Ryan's core value of consistent, what do you think about?
For me, it's not the podcast that I know is kind of the benchmark for his behaviors, like his release of his podcast. For me, it's just the way he shows up. Like he's always curious. He's always asking questions. So I think of, thoughtful, thankful, curious, like he's always those things, which allows him to live his value of consistent. So that's the interesting part to me, is that's what most people can't do. Most people struggle to consistently be who they are. And I think the level of, authenticity and realness that Ryan shows up with and is genuine about, regardless of his situation or what he's doing, that's what I think is remarkable.
I love it. Ryan, what made you etch consistent as the fourth one?
I honestly think it's my family DNA, man. Like
Yeah.
I know my parents get up to work every day. My dad, like similar to Brook's dad, like no matter what, you just go to work. And it's probably something especially to usually people like are inspired or they follow their older brother, which I definitely did with my older brother, but we just have different interests and different pursuits, and he's better at different things than me. But I also followed my younger brother and seeing how consistent that he is today. He's still that today and has been his whole life. So I wrote about him in there when it comes to consistent, because like we just had an unwritten rule, an actually unsaid rule. We've never really spoke about it. It's just assumed that when we went to college, like we actually had fun. Like we went out, like we bonded with our teammates a lot. That was really important as football players, I think, to like be there with your, especially as a quarterback. And he was the quarterback of the defense, playing middle linebacker, calling the plays. Was that no matter what, you're at the first lift in the morning. You're at the very first morning lift or the very first morning run. You're not waiting to the second one or the afternoon one in the summer because you went after it too hard the night before. No matter what, you get up and go. And so I just think I just try to do the same thing. Like no matter what happens, like you just get up and go. I took my daughter for her 16th birthday to Florida the last 4 days, and we flew back, and flight delays, whatever. You get home at 2:00 in the morning. Like nobody cares. Nobody cares that your flight got delayed. You got back at 2 a.m. Like what I care though is I'm not missing my lift the next day. Did I sacrifice sleep, which then may hurt me? Yeah. But like being consistent and getting in the gym, because nobody cares that my flight got delayed. It's just going to happen. There's no question. My wife doesn't even ask me or try to tell me, hey, you should get more sleep, because she knows. She knows. I'm not even going to mess with that. Maybe she did like 10 years ago. At this point, she's like, that's just how it's going to be. So I just think you got to get up and work. If you're not overly brilliant or overly talented, you just got to get up and work. And it's not sexy. It's not that fun. We get asked in Q&A when we give talks or do stuff. They ask us in Q&As for the hacks and for what can we do, the quick thing to win. And we're like, get up and work. And everybody's bummed out. They're like, wait, there's got to be something. They're like, well, maybe there is. I don't know if I figured it out. So to me, I just got to kind of get up and work. And if I do that enough days, consistently, cool things usually seem to happen. So I'm just going to keep doing that.
I think you share a story about AJ, your brother, working out like before or after a big game. Like, can you share that? Like, I feel like that was a great illustration.
It was just normal, but so they beat Michigan one of the games. I forget, it might have been his junior or senior year. I don't remember, but he had early access to the weight room after his freshman year. He kind of asked for that and got it. And the coach was walking in to the like the Woody Hayes facility where they work out and where they watch film and meet and stuff after the Sunday after that game. And my brother was walking out. He was, sweaty from working out. And the coach just kind of was like, "Hey man, what's up?" And I share like it wasn't that big of a deal because that was just another day. It didn't matter that you beat Michigan. It didn't matter if you lost to Michigan. It didn't matter if your next game wasn't until the Fiesta Bowl, which was like a month and a half away. It just doesn't matter. Like he went out and had a good time with his buddies after the game. He bonded with his teammates. He didn't like not do that. He did that, but he also knew that you're gonna get up and work no matter what. And I think like it just wasn't like a big thing or a big deal because that was just the next day. It was just a normal day. And I think that's what I try to do. I know he does the same thing today with his work. So it's almost like, yeah, our parents like programmed that in us when we were really little, and it just has never really gone away.
Yeah. Brook, you talk about your son who plays at a high level in high school. You have this story that I love about, I'd love for you to share it. Like, he works out twice a day, even if he has a game or something like that. Can you expand on that? Because I feel like this is such a great tie-in.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same thing. I think sports are a great avenue for developing habits. I was thinking about that as we were talking. It's like we send kids to school and to sports to learn about basketball or to learn about math or to learn about science. And really what they're learning about is how to deal with failure, how to approach life, how to deal with things changing. That's really the subject matter. But for Gabe, it's just always been about work. Like, just like Ryan said, like, we're not talented, so you better figure it out. Like, if you want to be really good at something, then work at it. And it needs to be something that you decide. I don't think that's something you can force on someone. And so for Gabe, it was really just conversations like, well, if you want this, then this is what you're going to have to do. And so, we say your work needs to match your aspirations. If you can't say I want an A in class and then never come to class or never take notes. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Just like you can't say I want to play basketball at the highest level and never work out. And so, Gabe had an opportunity to try out for the North Coast Blue Chips, which was Bronny James's team growing up. And he had been shooting every day. Like, he had shot every morning, and we did ball handling, and we had been working out for a long time. But when he got that invitation to try out for that, he was like, "Man, I'm going to have to really work." And I said, "Well, if you want to have a best chance of making the team, yeah." Like, I don't have, like, at that point, we had no idea how he compared to anybody else in the world. Like, I don't know. We knew what was in our gym, what was in our basement, really. And so he did. He started working out 2 or 3 times a day, and it just has grown into this mindset now of like, some people are like, "Oh, he's got to rest today. He's got a game. And it's like, those people miss the entire point. The point isn't the game. The point is the mentality that you're never there. That's the point. And so why wouldn't you work out? Like, you're not there. And so he has that. So whatever else basketball brings for him is great. But he does that now. He's a freshman at Indiana and works out every morning. They got a game. He works out. It's just what he does.
That's amazing. I think I heard you guys talk about that he played Bronny like one-on-one, like for fun. Is that what happened there?
Yeah, like at the tryout. So he went to the tryout. I told the guy no the first 2 times he asked him to come to the tryout. And then I finally was like, okay, we'll bring him up there. It'll be good competition. And so they're playing the first part of the tryout. And then, like, they have a water break. And we're sitting there, my wife and I are sitting there watching. And Gabe just walks up to Bronny and is like, checks the ball up, like they're getting ready to play one-on-one. So Gabe just walked up to Bronny and was like, "You want to play one-on-one?" And I was like, I told my wife, I was like, "What is he doing? He's going to screw this whole thing up. Like, what is going on?" And to his credit, I mean, he's kind of that's just kind of who he is. Like he was not scared. He wasn't like backing down. He was actually running into the fire. And so just like I was like, "What were you doing?" He's like, "I want to know how good I was. I wanted to see how good I was." And so, they went back and forth a few times, and the coaches that picked the team at that point, they made a point of telling us that his willingness to challenge Bronny or want to play Bronny, said something about who he was and how he wanted to be better and how he wanted to challenge. He wasn't afraid. So it was cool. It was cool.
I assume, Omaid, you've seen the video of Gabe and LeBron having a 3-point contest. Have you seen this? Oh, I'll send it to you.
No, I'll have to see it.
I'll send it to you.
I'll have to see it. Now, you know what I love about that story, though, is like the fact that your son, like, I hope, like, my kid, they're younger. My son just started baseball, and I love the fact that, like, he's like 6, like the ball can go like right through his legs. Doesn't care whether he catches it or misses it, but he'll just go get it and he'll throw it, and he doesn't feel bad about it. It's just started playing baseball. Like, that's just is what it is. And I love the fact that, like, he's willing to have that, sort of moment of truth where, hey, I want to like benchmark where I'm at, and I'm willing to take the shot, whether I look good or bad. Most kids would not go. Most kids would not approach him. And obviously, you're doing something right. So that's pretty cool to see that.
Well, I don't know about that, but it was cool. Like the willingness to embrace, like, no fear of failure. The stuff that we train kids incorrectly to do, like we train them to be afraid of that kind of stuff. And it was cool to see him. And to his credit, he's maintained that. He still approaches it like that.
I was watching this YouTube video recently of Michael Jordan, and he was in some, like, it looked like a hotel ballroom talking to parents about, like mid-90s Michael talking about just taking the shot. And it's not, the sport, exactly what you said earlier. The subject matter is about being, willing to take the shot and not working out and seeing how you respond. And it just made me think of that. Just on the basketball front, if I asked your assistant coach, Eli, what he thinks of you as a leader, what would you hope that he would say?
I mean, I would hope he would say that I'm tough, passionate, unified, and thankful.
Brian, why are you laughing?
I'm just thinking of the vulgar words Eli might use to describe his boss. Lovingly, of course. No, I'm joking. I just think it's funny because part of the fun, Omaid, honestly, is of the squad we've kind of built to work with the companies we work with, is that we can bust each other's balls. And I think that happens a lot. And so nobody's immune from that. We all get on each other. There's certainly things to make fun of me about, for sure, that I but you know what it reminds me of? Like, it reminds me of being on a team, and those are the things I miss the most. I miss the most about that. I have that with some of my buddies, but when you're part of a team, you're doing something hard together. And in this case, we're trying to help other people. And that's a messy job because people are inherently messy. But if you can, like, our pre-meetings leading up to like the sessions with companies we work with are some of my most enjoyable times in what we get to do, because there's a lot of that happening. We don't take we take our work very seriously, but we do not take ourselves that seriously. So we're going to make fun of each other a lot. And that's part of being on a team. And that's part of the fun, because we're humans. We make mistakes. We do dumb stuff. Like, sometimes you want to look good on Zoom, so you put on the spray tan, like Brook does that all the time. No, one of my daughters was in school suspension with Brook that he teaches, and she was like trying to spill all of my beauty secrets. And I was like, well, what the hell? Like, it's all out there. Go for it, Addie. So like, it's fun.
She did tell me.
I think what?
She did tell me, and I was like, oh, hell no. And so
she told you about the
I
foundation.
immediately sent a text to the group.
Yeah, of course. You know, like I'm gonna get hammered for that. But I thought, like, hey, you know, this is real. So anyway, Omid, sorry, I don't know if I messed up. The question was about Eli and what he would say. So you can get back to that. But I honestly, I think just one of the coolest parts is just it just reminds me of being a part of some of the sports teams I was on. So okay, proceed.
I love it. No, I mean, you hit something. I think that is important though. Like the more comfortable you are with people that you work with, like I can message a buddy and say, man, like I seriously hope you shaved because it's been like 3 weeks before this next Zoom call, right? And like it is like he just never like I joke that like I can't see his teeth because his beard is so big on our Zoom calls, right? But I can say that and we're super prepped for a meeting and it's just fun. Like those are the
Yeah.
things that I really love. And so I do think it's important. I think it's important that you point that out. But yeah, so what other than the values, Brooke, what would you hope Eli says about you? I'll share a few things that he did say.
I would I don't know how you got that, but I I would hope that he would say that I'm empowering, that I'm open and listen, I'm humble enough to listen to other people's thoughts and insights. I would hope he'd say I'm hardworking, I'm prepared. I care about the team more than I care about myself. Uh, yeah, that's good.
I love that. So he said he'd been coaching with you and for you for 14 years. He said the things that make him different, his detachment from man's approval or what society thinks about him or his teams, his focus. I mean, he was really thorough, so I can't read all this. He said his focus on the process over the end result. We don't set team goals to win league championships, state titles, etc. Instead, we set team goals that we can actually control and assess on a daily basis. He went on to say that you spend much more time on core values than X's and O's, positive body language, communication in huddles versus like boxing out and taking shots in specific situations. Yeah, so I thought that was cool of him to say that. He didn't make fun of you at all, so I just hope you appreciate that.
He saved those from just directly to me.
Oh man, you guys doing good?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I want to talk about your who or people, but before we get there, I love to just hear from you guys. What is a foxhole friend?
I think we call them 3 a.m. friends in the book is part of what we talk about. I just think of those people that, you know, you're first of all, a foxhole, just by definition, they care about who you are, not what you do. I think that's the easiest way to describe them. They don't care if you win or lose the game. They still care about you. They don't care if you get fired. They still care about you. They show up for you all the time. If you are broken down at 3 a.m., 8 hours away, and you call them, they'll be like, yeah, I'll be there. It won't be like, oh, I got it. They're just coming. They're just coming to get you. And so you do not have very many of those people. I think we mistake relationships and friends for foxhole friends. You probably only have maybe 4 to 5 of those people in your life, and that's okay. That's all you need. But just an awareness of who those people are, because they are, I think Adam Grant calls them disagreeable givers. Like those are the people that'll tell you the truth when you really need to hear the truth. You know, your friends will laugh at you when your fly's down in front of everybody, but not tell you. Your foxhole people will laugh at you, but then they'll tell you, like, dude, your fly's down. Right. And so you need those people in your life, and you need to know who they are, because that's who you should be going to. Like, we don't, Eli said, detaching from man's approval. Everybody's opinion doesn't matter, but some do. And those people that are foxhole people, those are the people that you can trust their opinion, because it's not jaded by other things.
You must get a lot of parents giving you their opinion on this person should play or you should do this. Obviously, it's in a work environment.
Had 2 emails today, actually. Yeah. Yep. You're right on it.
How do you handle that?
Say, thanks. I appreciate your opinion. Do I come to your job and tell you how to do it? No, I don't say that part, but I usually just say, thank you. I appreciate your interest. And sometimes, honestly, I read it and I consider it. Sometimes it's good. There's good stuff in there. I don't just completely dismiss it right away. I think I'm old enough now and I've done it long enough that I don't get emotionally attached to those things. Like it doesn't fire me up. If somebody emails me and tells me like we're not doing things right, it's okay. That's fine for you to have an opinion. It's also fine for me not to agree with it. So I'm able to now just take it as data and information and not create narratives and stories around it.
Is this kind of term foxhole friend, is that something that like you sort of used to use and then you guys talked about it? Is that new to you, Ryan, or is this a term that you've used for a long time?
It's from Don Meyer. Don Meyer was a
Oh.
old basketball coach at a bunch of different places. Really, really successful. Always at lower level colleges. So he was kind of cool. But he's the one that, I mean, it's a military term, obviously. It's the holes that they dug. Like that's how we do an exercise in our program. I got it from Don Meyer, where you're sitting in a foxhole. Who are the three people you want in your foxhole with you? The one person behind you and one person on each side. And what it does is it whittles away like playing favorites or buddy ball or whatever. Like, dude behind you can't see. If you pick a guy that's sometimes he's late to practice, you're getting shot in the back of the head, right? So who are your most dependable guys? Like, who do you count? Like, who can you count on when things aren't going well? Like, so we always have that conversation as one of our skull sessions. And it's interesting, like, there are years where our best players in no one's foxhole. Well, that's a problem. And you're really good when your best players are in everybody's foxhole. So then we talk about we share that information with our guys too. Like here, like nobody puts you in their foxhole. What do you think that says? You think they're all wrong, or do you think you need to change your actions and your behaviors so they trust you?
Have you had one of those recently with like a really good player? Obviously, you're not going to name the player. I don't expect you to do that, but I'm just curious, like, how do you deal with that? That would be tough.
This year?
This year? Okay. That's hard, man. That is tough.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would say now though, Ryan, now I bet those guys would be in people's foxholes at the end of the year.
That's cool.
Because their behaviors have changed and they've been more consistent. Like
if we did that exercise as the quarterback and I felt like I wasn't there, especially at minimum with my offense, that would destroy me. Like I would want to do anything I could to fix that. That's how cool am made back to how a coach can change your life, to be able to get that real, because most coaches, they're like, the guy's really talented, he's really good, let's just kind of like prop him up so he can go score 20 or whatever, get his rebounds, because that will help me win the games. But they wouldn't have those tough conversations to be like, do you realize you're not in any of your teammates' foxholes? Do you realize that? Like, we can do something about that. That's the selfless thing to do. That's the selfless act to say, I'm going to take some short-term, like big pain. Probably I'm going to hurt this young kid because it's going to sting. Like that would hurt me right now, let alone when I was like 16, 17, 18. But I'm going to do that because I care and love for this kid, because that will change the trajectory of his life, because he'll learn like, wait a second, my guys didn't trust me. I'm not dependable. But by the end of the year, maybe we can change that. And then that will change his arc as he goes to college and plays maybe, or whatever he decides to do. I got to imagine that kid or those kids are thinking about those conversations, and it just alters and changes their whole trajectory, which is so cool.
I think part of that comes down, I think of that story that you told about your dad and his boss and like the trust factor. And like, he like, almost like he made a big business decision, but he didn't really even need to make a phone call. Like they had that trust. So I imagine in his work foxhole, maybe his boss would have been in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And that was also just based on his track record and his history, and I think his dependability and work ethic and consistency of just kind of always doing the right thing at all times. That there was no, it truly was then the speed of trust. Like trust decreases transaction cost, and so when you have that, like you can move really fast and you can make quick decisions, even large ones, as we wrote about, whether it's Warren Buffett or my dad and his boss Bob Romeo. So I think like those stories are like they're also inspirational to say, like, I want to be both trust willing and a trustworthy person, because then life is like a lot faster. Like, we can get stuff done, we can get after it if you live that way, versus the other ones that are more cynical, or they make you earn it over a long period of time. Like, it just I'd rather lead with it and get burned every once in a while, which definitely happens, by the way. But it's, to me, it's just more enjoyable. It's better, and I seem to attract like high level people, and that's, you got to have that. Like, I don't think, and none of us, like, we're all community made, so we need others around us. So I got to do whatever I can to attract those types of people.
Brooke, what do you think about making the trust wager? Are you hesitant about that?
No, I'm all in. I'm all in. Like I I've been burned plenty of times. I think how you treat someone's a reflection of you, not me. So like if you're going to violate our trust, that's not on me. That's your choice, and that's fine. I'm willing to make that wager. You can't be a high school coach and not be willing to do that. I mean, you can. There are plenty of them, but you can't really impact kids if you don't. Like, I'm trusting 16, 17, and 18-year-old kids to go out and do what they're supposed to do every night, for everybody to watch and judge how good of a coach I am. I'm a trusting dude.
I love it. I
Like,
feel like
it's
it's the
easy.
opposite of what we're, sort of taught growing up, is to not trust anybody, or like, you need to earn my trust, or
Yeah.
whatever. But back to what Ryan had kind of asked earlier, just curious, like, you don't have to tell us the person's name, but like, what was it like when you gave that feedback? Is there a lesson we can all learn in how you delivered it? And I'm wondering what his sort of initial reaction was.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, I showed him the results, and I said, "What do you think of that?" And there's two responses that I've gotten on that. They're either going to own it or they're going to deflect it, right? Like, they're either going to say, "Those dudes, they don't even," or they're going to be like, "Damn," right? And if they say, "Damn," now you can have a conversation. Now like, that's your moment to try to teach and talk and help them create behaviors, and talk to them about, well, why don't you think they trust you? It's not because you turn the ball over. It's not because you miss shots. It's not, like, let's talk about what maybe leads to that lack of trust. And so, and if they
What
just,
is it usually?
it's usually inconsistency. Like, they're
Mm.
not always at our breakfast club. They're not always going hard. They're not always focused. They haven't always watched film. They're not always prepared. It's a lack of consistency, or they think they prioritize themselves over the team.
I think
So
you both talk about like your reputation sort of precedes you, right?
yeah, for sure.
Brian, you said one of the reasons why Bob trusted your dad was because he knew his reputation before he
Mm-hmm.
started working for him, right?
Yeah, I think it's whether it's your brand, if you want to get
Yeah.
fancy with it, but it's just basically who you are. And people, especially in an organization where he was, like, everybody knows everybody. They know how you show up, especially in leadership roles. You can find out quickly, like, oh yeah, you can count on that guy, right? Something as simple as that, you can count on that guy. Like, he's going to get it done. He's there. And then even like, I love Bob Romeo. I've had dinner with him a few times. He's a great dude. But he's a tough, like, hardcore Italian guy, and he actually probably doesn't lead with trust, right?
Yeah.
Still done great in his career, but doesn't. But man, like, if you earned it in his case, like, you could kind of go do your thing. You could make $100 million decisions with just like a text message. Hey Bob, just want to let you know we're doing this. Gotcha. And so I think that's a cool spot to be in with a person like that. But for some of those people, you do have to earn that. And I think my dad's has always been good about earning that.
I love it. All right, let's flip gears to the people you surround yourself with. Ryan, I know you had an inflection point in an interview with the great Jim Collins. I'd love to learn, when you think about all the interviews you've done, one of the greatest lessons you've learned about who you surround yourself with. Can you share what that inflection point was and why it was so important to include this as part of the book?
I was really amped up. It was 216. I've been trying episode 216. So 215 people preceded him, trying really hard to get him. It took forever, many calls, many emails, like, jumped through a lot of hoops. And Jim just wasn't doing interviews, but eventually he gets on. So you can imagine, Omid, I'm really excited. I'm talking very fast. I'm long-winded, and I'm explaining to him about my business and all the stuff I'm doing and how excited I was, and this is what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and how I'm doing it. And he's like, whoo, calm down, bub. And like that, kind of like that wise old uncle. And he's like, oh, that's great. Thanks for telling me. The single greatest determining factor in your long-term success or failure will be your who. Who will be your friends? Who will be your mentors? Who will you marry? Who will you intentionally choose to surround yourself with? And that word intentional was really big, because to that point, I actually thought I was good at it. I thought, like, I'm doing this. But then you actually analyze it. Who's ahead of me, beside me, behind me, and who am I intentionally trying to develop relationships with in each of those three buckets? And I wasn't that intentional at all. I was just kind of going about my life and my job and my work, and whoever was there was kind of who was there. And some of them were great, so that's a little bit lucky. But then also other ones was just like, there wasn't really anything there. And so what it really did, Omeda, was just made me much more intentional about thinking about who those people should be, and then taking the next step, which is investing in those relationships, going first, right? Sending the first text or the call, right? Responding. It's actually something you're really good at now that I think about it, right? Like, you're really good about like sending me a question about something, and I'm like, oh yeah, and it leads to a longer conversation. But like, that's being intentional about reaching out to somebody you want in your who. And I think that's to me, I was just unintentional up to that point, and after that moment, I feel like I tried to get better. Which then you think about the conversation with Brook. And I actually didn't know anything about Centerville basketball before he emailed me, because while I live here, my kids are, at the time at least, were younger and not near high school age. So I had no reason to go to Centerville High School. And I didn't go for years. So I didn't know who the basketball coach was. I didn't know if the team was good or not. And then I met him and realized after like the first day, oh, yeah, this is a relationship I should invest in. This is going to be worth it. This hopefully could be mutually beneficial, but at minimum, it'll probably be beneficial to me. So I need to try to invest in that. So I just think that's really what it's all about, is just being intentional about those people, not wandering through your life just saying, oh, okay, yeah, I work with them, and oh, they're there. To me, that's what I was doing, and that kind of flipped after that conversation.
So fast forward, and you ask him to speak at an event you're putting together. Brook, can you share that experience? Like, what were you thinking? You're pretty humble in the book about this, but I'd love to hear sort of what was that like for you?
Me speaking at Ryan's event?
Yeah, the first time he asked you, and I think you said something along the lines of like, what the hell am I doing here?
Yeah, that's exactly what I said. I didn't think at the time, I grew up in education. My dad was a teacher. My mom was a bus driver. I've never been in the corporate world. I've closest I've come is to working on farms. Like so like I've never been in that venue. And so I just didn't have any idea what CEOs of companies could have in common or need to hear from a basketball coach or a teacher. But I said, I told Ryan I would do it. At first I was like, dude, I don't think they want to hear from me. And then, he was like, nah, you need to come do it. It'll be awesome. So I did. And once I decided to do it, I was like, all right, then let's just go then. I'm just going to give it my best shot. And if they like it, great. If they don't like it, it's cool too. They ain't coming to class tomorrow, so it'll be fine. So
Ryan, what do you think passed the sniff test to this audience? What was it about that, if you remember?
Well, I mean, Brook is, I think a lot of people are attracted to his comfort in his own skin, to his, as Eli said, you could already sense it probably made from just meeting him, of no like need for your like affirmation of other people. Like, it just doesn't exist. And to me, that makes me more curious. How do you do that? How do you get closer to that? I think people can sense that right away from his speaking. Also, he went for it when he said that. Like, we were doing these crazy handshakes. We were doing improv stuff. We were up on our feet. And then he shared his values and the behaviors and what they're all about. And I think by the end of it, everyone's like, I want to be more like that. I want to have those. I want to have my values. I want to do that. And so I did. I asked the whole group at the end, I sent out a questionnaire of like, who was your favorite speaker? And there were other professional paid public speakers that spoke, and Brook was the number one person that everybody chose more than anybody else. So there was obviously something there, and that probably stems down to a guy who really knows himself, who shows up authentically. He's not trying to be somebody else or trying to like put on a show. He's just himself. And I think people are attracted to that. It seems to be a through point and a theme of this entire conversation, that people seem to want to go in the direction of those who are who know themselves, who aren't trying to be somebody else, and then they just show up and do it. And when you find people like that, you're like, hey, let me I want to be more like that, and so you want them in your life.
It reminds me of that story that you shared about you and Miranda like hiking, and it's like icy, and people were like slipping everywhere, and some people maybe thought you were crazy because you didn't have like spike shoes on. And she said, even the people that have like the hiking sticks and the right shoes, they should be on their hands and knees, because
Definitely.
they're still
People
slipping.
could die, dude.
Yeah. And like, I think you said something like they're probably just afraid, or she said like they're just probably like afraid to look stupid.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. I think it was an amazing trip. We were not properly prepared because it was our first time doing it, but we crawled. Like we wanted to get to the top. We crawled. We thought that was the safest way to do the boldest thing. My friend Lance Salyers always told me to do that when I worked with him at LexisNexis, and he's like, do the bold thing, but so you can still be safe about it. So for us, it was crawling on our hands and knees up those 17 switchbacks. Angels Landing in Zion National Park when it was cold and iced over, but there were people slipping with spikes and poles, and I'm like, what? I mean, you could easily slip and either die or hurt yourself very, very badly. And it didn't make much sense to us why they were trying to walk upright when it was obviously much safer to crawl.
I love it. I want to flip to behaviors. One of the stories I thought about, Brooke, was your mom, and you said she's the most selfless person you've ever met. Tell me about that.
I mean, she would always get up in the morning, fix me breakfast. I left the house at like 5:15. She would get up, fix breakfast for me every morning. Always positive, always thinking about other people rather than herself. It was just a great model. Kind of like Ryan said, I was just very lucky with my parents. My mom is, very much my thankful value, just showing love. I mean, she's a grandma, so she like, of course, her grandkids could never do anything wrong. But that's part of it. Like her ability to see the positive in everything and every person is so admirable, and something that I'm not great at. I need to continue growing in, but something I aspire to be able to be better at and be more intentional about.
I love it, Ryan. On the behavior front, one of the things that you shared around consistency, and I'm thinking about your dad, but you said something around being present with your kids, even when you're tired, even after work. And you said kids don't care if you're tired from a long day of work. They care about being with you while doing something they enjoy. The answer is yes, always yes, no matter what. I'm wondering, where did you learn this? Was it from Pistol?
Oh yeah. Still that way. I was just, when we took Ella to Florida for her 16th birthday, that's where we stayed with my parents. He's still that way. Want to go to the gym, whatever. Like he I was with him. So, it just became normal. It just was normal because we played all sports. So we lived right by a park, so we could go back in the park and play football, baseball, basketball, ping pong, tennis, swimming, all of them. Always there doing all of them. And it was, I think that's just became normal for us, was to throw and catch. We'd always practice like one-handed catches. He'd always rebound for us when we're shooting. He went and bought catcher's gear. He's left-handed, so it was awkward. There's not that many catcher's gloves where you put on your right hand. But he bought all that when we were pitching a lot. So like that was just the normal way it was, is to show up with whatever we were most interested in doing, which was always playing sports, and all of the sports, just whatever season it was in. So that was, he always said like, thought I would play receiver because I love like making these big catches and getting my feet in bounds, like that type of thing, where he would throw me sideline passes, stuff like that. And I think quarterbacks have to have good hands. So I always wanted to be able to do both. But I just think that's the main thing is that I try to do the same thing. You know, we live right by a park. We intentionally built a home there for a reason. There are soccer fields and lacrosse fields by our house. It just so happens that we have lacrosse players and soccer players in our house now. So we go over there, and we were just there last night, in fact, playing lacrosse. And I think I don't know anything about that sport. But I'm, you know, I actually I got a chance to meet with the coach and ask her a bunch of questions. She probably thought I was a complete idiot, but I was just trying to learn a little bit about the sport. With my now 9-year-old who's playing for the first time. She has an older sister who also plays for the high school team. But yeah, man, I just think you just got to be there. You just got to show up. You got to be there no matter what. And it's the things that they're interested in, not what I'm interested in. And yeah, I guess there would be a time where I'm like, let's go to the movie I want to watch. But for the most part, like that doesn't work. You just got to kind of go do the things that they want to do and try to enjoy. I mean, dude, I took 3 16-year-old girls to Florida and they really enjoy shopping. Okay. Like I don't fully get it. I don't understand the whole thing, but that's what they wanted to do. So there I was. Right
day,
there
I
at
imagine, yeah.
random stores doing all that stuff. But it was fun. You know, it was fun. I think you just got to be present, enjoy it, and be there with them. And that ultimately that's part of our job is to show up and be there.
Okay, so the idea is to come up with your values, and then you've got the behaviors that sort of emulate those values. And then you guys also talk about creating like imagery. Am I thinking about it right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the imagery aspect of it? How do you explain that? And like why?
Go ahead, man.
I love how quick he like passes the buck.
Honestly, this is one of my favorite exercises. We both enjoyed this one. I want to make sure though, Brooke, do you have to go to practice?
3. I need to probably leave 3.
I've already texted Eli. Don't worry about it. He's got it covered. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
I said I am never ever going to do anything that will make him not only miss practice, but he can't be late. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
No, so we have mantras which are similar to that. Those are just like reminder tags, but I think you're referring to the ethos exercise where just think about like what image best represents what you believe, how you would portray yourself or your values or the way you want to live life. And so we do this exercise where we have people pick, 2 or 3, 4. You could pick one for each value. You could pick one picture that does everything. You can pick, a few that kind of speak to different aspects of your being or your person. And I mean, the cool part is we remember pictures. And I think that's probably the most powerful thing when we've worked with groups and leaders. When you start attaching a picture to it, like I remember one from one of our first. I don't think it was Nashville, but maybe it was. But somebody talked about being a buffalo with their, walking straight into the storm, and like you get to tell about that and the stories that go behind it. For me, a wolf is a big deal. And so talking about how my core values relate to a wolf. So
95 at 96. 96.
Bus 95 is bus 96. 95 is 96.
Well, I know you're at work and we'll take all the time we can get. Do you remember the quote from The Law of the Jungle that you had shared? The Rudyard Kipling quote?
Yeah. Strength of the wolf is the pack. The strength of the pack is the wolf.
Yeah. So that was yours.
Yeah.
That was your. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah. I just that resonates with me because I've never viewed myself as super talented. Like I've just always viewed myself as somebody that's willing to work. And by myself, I'm very average. But within a team, I think I can be really, really good, and I can help other people be really good. And so, that's what a wolf is to me. One of my favorite quotes is, lions and tigers are cool, but you don't see a wolf in a circus. So I just think of like a wolf is a badass.
You guys talk about mantras. I think in almost every interview, I used to ask, like, is there a mantra that you carry with you in good or tough times? Well, I would ask it, but what I love that you guys wrote about is like why a mantra is important. So I'd love to hear from either of you guys. What's the importance of that? And then if each of you can share one, that would be awesome.
Go ahead.
I think a mantra is a reset button. That's how we describe it to my students in class. I'll use fight ready for me, for tough. So if I'm getting ready to do a workout and I'm sitting down on the bench, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that, or I don't want to get out of bed. And like, that's what pops into my head. Fight ready. Come on, fight ready. And so like that mantra is the reset button to put you back to the initial, like the best version of that value. And so I say fight ready because for me, it goes back to imagery too. I think your mantras create an image for you. For me, I think of a boxer going into a ring. That's why I say fight ready. Because a boxer doesn't walk into a ring all mopey or like not wanting to get out of bed, right? And so like that resets me to like, okay, let's go top, like best version of that value. Ryan?
Oh, I'll choose consistent. I think my critical behavior with that is to show up, but it's not enough just to show up. The mantra that comes along with that, it would be at our level, meaning at our level means there's a standard. It's not just, it's similar to how you would show up in the weight room. Like you don't just show up to get in there to say, present, I'm here. It's how you choose to show up. It's having a standards of performance that you're going to go, regardless of what it is and regardless of how you feel. You're not always going to feel like it. So to me, it's good to have those sayings as you're progressing through and you're struggling with things and maybe you're feeling sorry for yourself and you want to make an excuse as to why you're not going to give it everything you've got or why you're going to skip something. It's just like, that's not living within my values. That's not being real. That's not being authentic to myself. And those mantras, the ethos, the imagery, all that stuff helps, right? When we need help, right? We're creating tools for ourselves to help us live this stuff out because it's hard. And I think that's what makes it good. The hard is what makes it good, but it's not, it's just not for the faint of heart. It's not for everybody, but we hope that our work will make others much more intentional about this than they were previous to reading it.
To put a bow on this, so Brook's not late. Brook, maybe you can kick this off. We talked about JJ Redick, basketball guy. You guys talk about his practice and his work ethic. He played for Duke. He was on the Learning Leader show. I'd love for you guys to talk about what we can learn from JJ Redick.
I mean, the quote "never arrived, always becoming." I attribute that to Redick. I don't know if it's really his or not, but that's what I think of just his continuous commitment to improving. If you look at his NBA career and just kind of how he went about it, and you've listened to some of the stuff he's talked about, but that's really what the score that matters is. Like, it's a focus on the process and realizing that process is never over. It never ends, and being okay with that. Being okay with the setbacks and challenges that go with it and embracing it anyway. And, thinking that is the best way to go about creating the most fulfillment in your life.
Yeah. For me, like, I actually do like to go out and climb mountains. That's part of one of the ways that Miranda and I enjoy each other's company is to go out and hike. And we've done a lot more of it over the last couple of years. And the cool thing about hiking is you do eventually get to the top of some of these mountains, and then you realize it's not about that. It's about, the people you become, in our case together, the people we become along the way. And I think that's really what this is all about. I think Brook and I both feel very fortunate to be doing something where the reward is the actual work. And that's what never arrived, always becoming is. It's just the fun of this is just because you finish a book or you do some big podcast or a big speech, like, that's great. And then you go on to the next one. Like, the reward is the work. And I hope, people have jobs and professions to where the reward is the actual action they're doing each day. I realize not everybody has that, but that's, to me, is what this is all about. Is it's like being grateful that the reward for me is the work. And it's really more about like who I'm becoming each of those days, more so than like any mountaintop, or in Brook's case, like winning another title. It's really about the people they're becoming as they're doing it.
One of the questions I told you I had a chance to interview James Clear. I asked him, like, how do you avoid the complacency trap? You sell 20 million books. How do you, like, what gets you up? in the morning after that. Because a lot of people, most people, maybe you guys would agree, you achieve selling as many books as Stephen Covey did. You know, you do it in 5, he did it in 25 with the 7 habits, right? Like, that's pretty good, right? Like you can easily get comfortable. And I felt like he was being authentic when he said this, but he said, really, my goal is to be useful. And if I can be useful, like if the book never sells another copy, I'll be fine. But that's not what I did it for. I just want to be useful every day. And I just like kept thinking about that. Like, wow, this guy's book can go viral and it's a great book. And he's not comfortable. Like he's not even just sitting back. Like he just wants to make sure that, you know, he's doing the thing that he wants every day, which is to help people. That's pretty inspiring. And it sounds like you guys are doing the same thing.
You know, when you think about the score that matters, like thinking people are going to get complacent because of selling 25 million books or winning a state championship is operating under the assumption that that's their definition of success. So that's the difference. Like the complacency doesn't set in because that's not how he's defining success. And so the success is being useful. And so that you're never really as useful as you could be. Like you can always improve on it. And so that in itself, just by how you're defining success, is the fight of complacency.
I love it. Do you guys feel like there's anything we missed? Because I have more questions. We can go on for another hour, but is there anything in the meantime you feel like we missed?
Appreciate your prep, man. I think we're good,
That's
man.
awesome.
I appreciate you reading it and thinking of the questions that you think of. I'll always appreciate you, man.
All right. I appreciate the time, guys. Also, thanks for just like leading into this and just the openness. It was a lot of fun. And yeah, looking forward to putting this together.
I appreciate
Awesome.
it. Great
All right,
to meet
thanks,
you.
Thanks,
guys.
man.
Likewise.
Thanks.
See you guys. Bye.